right, and welcome to the East County Prep Football Report for Week 7. I'm Ramon Scott, along with Dave Dickens. I cut the intro a little bit short there, Dave, so we can get on the online here. We can knock this one out in 45 minutes with our schedule this week. It's not a big schedule. I don't know if these are the dog days, Dave, or we got some teams on bye. Basically, 3/4 of the Hills League, 3 of the 4 teams on bye this week. Christian's on a bye. West Hills, we could talk about them. They're on a bye, though, as well, but they're in the poll. They were the only other East County team other than Helix to make the media poll this week. So I think we could talk about West Hills for a minute somewhere in there when we talk about the opening game of the week. But, Dave, it's about the Grossmont Valley League again this week, and just a big game that everybody's going to be waiting for in Lakeside. We're going to talk about all the matchups. There are only 6 games to talk about, 4 involving Grossmont Conference teams. But we're definitely going to talk about it, including the big one, part 1, right? Part 1 of a trilogy.
Absolutely, and I know where you're going with that, but you mentioned the dog days. I wanted to just make a little side note before we got into our prep football, and I don't know what to say. I don't know if I should be ashamed. I don't know if what to even say. That the San Diego Padres are 1 game below 500. You said the dog days. That's the only reason I said it.
No, fair enough. Yeah.
So I thought I'd hit that one because, good Lord. But I'm sure as all of us as Padre fans, we had a lot better or a lot higher hopes. But with that being said, some impressive wins. Last week we can get into the matchups as well, but boy, did we have some impressive wins.
Yeah. I mean, no doubt about it. Well, I guess we could talk about them as we go along. I'm just worried that we won't touch on everybody because of those teams with buys. But we'll talk about West Hills right now when we get underway. We just want to get into this matchup because we could probably spend 20 minutes on it if you want. We try to keep it within a half an hour even, but we might end up talking about this game for a half an hour, Dave. Santana at El Capitan. Part 1 of the trilogy involving Santana, El Capitan, and West Hills. What we're anticipating to be a great Grossmont Valley League season. Of course, Santana, they're a little bit challenged right now because of the fact that they are down a league game. We know that the game last week, Dave, against Mount Miguel is officially postponed, but I don't see where they can make up that game. So they're just going to have to, I would think in the end, be sporting about it and decide the league title by the least number of losses this season. Not assuming that Santana would have defeated Mount Miguel in any way. But you know what, Dave? If Santana can go out and defeat El Capitan and West Hills, then they don't have to worry about probably that game necessarily or what they're going to think. I think everyone would declare them the league champion. It might come down to an agreement by the coaches who's the league champion at the end of the year. But you know what? Win those 2 games, beat these 2 rivals. I'm talking about go out and beat out either El Capitan and West Hills, Santana and West Hills, El Capitan. You know what I'm saying.
I'll tell you one thing that you're in reaction to what you're saying is that's a tall order. For anyone
to sweep the 2 teams, you mean?
Correct.
Yeah.
And I'm also in reference to the game that wasn't played for Santana.
Okay.
I don't want to touch on it too much, but I think there's a little bit of political things going on there. But from what I understand, a little tongue in cheek. That game will be played again next year, so that's when that matchup will, as far as I know.
Well, they would be scheduled to play a league game next year. Is that what you mean? Or are they going to play twice and have 1 non-league game next year? Are they going to, they would have to play next year because they're both in the Valley League. Are they going to play a spring game? That isn't clear to me. So I don't know when I heard you say that, it didn't make any sense.
That's
They are scheduled likely to play next year as a league game. Were they going to play twice? Would be my only question. But go ahead.
I doubt that there's a doubleheader, but that is.
No, I mean in separate weeks. I mean, there are occasions where someone can play a team in week 1 and it's not a league game, and they say, in fact, it happened this year, right? One of our East County teams, I think maybe it was Mountain Empire, no, Foothills. I'm trying to think, but they played the same team twice, and one was a league game. So maybe we can get some clarity on that as the weeks go along. I'm sure that it's going to become a question as we play these 3 important games with the Valley League teams, barring any upset by the other Valley League teams against the big 3 right now.
Well, and I think sometimes too, it's not always the COVID protocol that everybody leans into. I think there's a lot more regular injuries, football injuries that are happening to key players, and I don't know for sure, but maybe that it plays a part in it too, especially when you look at some of the teams like Monte Vista or Mount McGill, or even Elkhorn Valley. They don't have a ton of players, so it doesn't necessarily always have to be the COVID protocol. It could be just having too many injuries.
Now, last week's game, though, was reported, if I'm not mistaken, I mean, right in the newspaper as well as a health protocol cancellation, right? Or do you know? Or
that's what I understand.
Because if you can't field a team because of injuries, I don't want to put you on the spot here. I mean, if you can't field a team because of injuries, that's a forfeit. We've seen it already. I'm going to talk about it later on with O'Farrell, but so I'm unclear. I'm unclear at this point. Type your responses in the chat. Reach me on Twitter, email Ramon, East County Sports. Please let me know if there is some type of, if that game was not, because first of all, we reported as a cancellation, and then some conference representatives came back to us and said, no, it's a postponement. Well, postponement means that we're not going to play the game this week, but we're going to play it before the end of the championship season, because what a season is you play towards championships. And, we really didn't get that necessarily in the spring. Now, if these two teams want to come back and play a game after the season, you could even play a game, say after I think both teams would have to be non-qualified for the playoffs. They could play a league game possibly. I don't. There's a certain date, but anything can be changed because of COVID. I don't want to get way off base because it sounds like I don't know what I'm talking about, because I don't. So at this point, Santana needs to make up a league game, or they can't win the league championship unless the coaches agree which team is declared the champion.
All I know, the only official information I know, as deep as it got, and I quote, was, it is not a cancellation. It is a postponement. As far as any details from there, it's more or less possibly contact your local San Diego section CIF office.
Well, in our preview column last week, I mean, we didn't even do one of those funny headline or, clever. I'll call them clever headlines since I write them. But we just made it a news headline that said, Matadors Sultans postponed at their request. And I would love for this game to be made up at some point, but I don't think there's a week available. They'd have to do some crafty maneuvering to get it played, unless they were to play it another time. So I can appreciate them if you want to say it's a postponement. So, because there's a negative connotation with the word cancellation. It's kind of like cancel culture, but in sports, it's terminology. Your game is either postponed or canceled. A postponement means we're going to play this game at a later date. We just can't play it right now. It's not necessarily because of the pandemic. It is this year and for the last, year and a half because of what's going on. But sometimes you have postponements for other reasons. A stadium malfunction, for example, or a bus gets stuck in traffic and you can play it the next day. There have been occasions where a Friday night game has been played the next day on Saturday. You know, with that one time, it's funny. Mount McGill couldn't play that one game because they had their bye week scheduled. Now, you know, that kind of sounds like a game that might be, you know, that even wasn't a scheduled game. So let's get off that, Dave. Let's talk about this game because this is going to go a long ways in deciding the championship. Santana, El Capitan. Unless you want to talk more about, you know, the logistics of it all.
I think that this one in particular, I think that people are underestimating the talent that El Capitan has this season. I'm not saying necessarily Coach Estes and his coaching squad or his team are saying that, but I just looking at the chatter, it sounds like people are in favor of Santana taking over El Cap, and you know, as far as the rankings are concerned too. But you know what? The way that I look at it, you know, El Capitan has played some solid squads, and let's not forget that the game that they did lose, boy, that thing came down to the wire. They were down by more than 20 points. And they, you know, the only thing that happened.
You're talking about the Coronado game.
Yes. And
right. But Santana beat Coronado at Coronado in overtime 10-7, if you want to make that comparison. Now, granted, like this game is at El Cap. Go ahead. I just want to point that out.
Fair enough. But here's my thing. You know, they did. I just think they ran out of time. And I think with time permitting, and they had more time, I think that this game could have turned out a lot different. Not to mention, let's not forget that they lost a lot of key players in that game as well.
Yeah, you know? And those players are going to be key this week. I don't even know the status right now of you know, those. Well, talk about the El Capitan players specifically, but Santana's had some injuries as well.
Well, Xavier Peace is, from what I understand, according to Coach Berner, Peace could go this week, and then he's hoping Alex Vea will be able to go the following week. But I think with Peace just being able to come back into that offense, that makes a huge difference in going up against this Santana defense. And I'm not going to say anything derogatory about that Santana defense because I think their record is largely attributed to that Santana defense, and I think they've kept them in several games. You look at some of those games, Mar Vista being one of them, having 5 turnovers. You know, the offense turned the ball over 5 times in the first half. You know what? If you didn't have a stout defense like that, I think you might have lost that game.
Yeah, and then the Sweetwater game was close as well. So Santana's had close calls, but right now, if you look at the official Division III, look, we know this is a big game in the Grossmont Valley League. This is also a huge game in the Division III ratings and playoff seedings. And right now, Santana is on top of the 3 teams. Okay, Santana is ranked 3rd in Division III. West Hills is 6th. El Capitan is 7th. You have a problem with that? Okay.
I don't agree.
You have West Hills on top right now, don't you?
I have West Hills on top, and I also think that El Capitan is too far below Santana. I think, if anything, they should be a number 4. If anything, I think they're too far down, and I don't think that the folks that are looking at these games know the East County as well as, say, yourself and myself.
Well, this is a mathematical formula designed by the CIF to help them determine. There's been a big controversy this week. I'll address that right now as well. A lot of talk on social media and some of the other talking heads like you and me about these ratings. And this is what the coaches agreed to, so they have to go with these numbers. But it says right there on CIF's football, information page that these ratings are a guideline, and then changes can be made. For example, sometimes a league champion might not even qualify for the playoffs, but CIF puts those league champions in and usually gives them a home game as well, so you can maneuver teams there. Sometimes a home team or a team that is lower rated will defeat a higher rated team and end up seated better than them. Well, they'll say, you know what? Let's just take, for example, I'll just use the two teams since they're right next to each other, West Hills and El Cap. Say El Cap goes in and beats West Hills on their home turf, but by some reason of the mathematics, West Hills ends up ahead of El Capitan. CIF will sometimes come in and say, you know what? Those two teams should be reversed. They fair and square one, on the road at that team's place. We've seen them do that as well. So CIF does put their finishing touches, and it's usually in agreement with the coaches because it's an obvious situation that kind of makes sense. So anyway, Dave, let's like I said, there's just so many intricacies talking about this game, the ratings, but it's also about the personnel, right? I mean, maybe that's where, I don't know, do you have Santana necessarily rated below those two teams personnel wise? Because we know Santana, has had some terrific, play of late from their stars, Nick Ledger, Tyler Anderson. You think of Ethan Wright, Braden Brashears, Logan Jordan, David Friedman, also, and Big Jackson Dolan on the line. Going up against the Vaqueros stars, the Yoakley brothers, Deshaun Desanor, Angel Diaz has stepped in for both those guys, really, because he's playing the role of the big fullback and scoring touchdowns. Also great on defense, El Cap, Dominic Denna, and Austin Cordero, and don't forget John Rose. So great personnel on both sides, Dave. We could talk about this game, and I'm not sure we can end up even picking a winner.
Well, you mentioned a lot of the Santana side, but let's remember that again, Xavier Peace being back is a huge addition to the Yoakley brothers, because that changes the whole dynamic. I mean, whether they go with they finally have not to take anything away from who they've been using with LaRussa Jr., but they have Peace, I should say, again. That's going to open up some play action. That's going to open up a whole different playbook. It's not going to just be the Oakley brothers, and everybody can't just turn on if we cover them, we're good to go. Not to mention, trying to cover both of the Oakley brothers is next to impossible, to be quite honest. I think that the missing component that possibly gives Santana this slight edge is definitely going to be not having Alex Faea. I think that if they had him healthy, you better look out, because I think both sides of the ball, I think it's going to come down to maybe a field goal with 2 seconds on the clock.
You're right. It could come down to either way, and I don't know. Jackson Scott's a pretty good kicker. He's proven himself already to be pretty clutch. But, El Capitan at home, that also makes for a great equalizer in this matchup. I mean, that's how closely these two teams are rated right now. I don't want to pick the game necessarily, but we're going to have to. Can we shake it down a little bit more, you think? I mean, look, Santana, do you question that their offense can move? I don't know. Their running game has been good. We know that Nash has missed a couple of ball games, but Brashears has stepped up nicely for him. So I don't know. I mean, Santana's had close ball games. I keep going back to that comparison. Look, El Capitan and Coronado are kind of rated similarly right now. And I'm just saying Santana beat Coronado in overtime on the road, while El Capitan lost to Coronado at home in Lakeside. Now, the Santana game was way back in week 1, the Santana Coronado, but the El Capitan game against Coronado was just a couple of weeks ago. El Capitan's had these injuries though creep up.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that briefly. Since they've had the injuries, where have they gone? They've gone up people are stepping up. They're finding people to replace those big name guys. As Coach Ron Berner said when they lost that game to Coronado, he said, you need games like this. You need games that you can do it. You came real close. You need games like this that you can reflect on. And he replied that these are the type of games that help you to refocus and fix the small things. And this could also change your season for the better. And if you look at the numbers, it certainly has. Injuries or not, they haven't lost a game since.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And Santana, they've rolled those 5 consecutive victories with a big turnover this year. I went down, looking at the rosters, Dave. El Capitan has the more experienced players that have played, especially going back. Now, it was different in the spring because Santana had a very, very good team, and maybe remember Santana blitzed El Capitan in that spring game. It was 42-7, but the game was over in the first quarter. Santana was so overwhelming on El Cap in that game, and it's the first time that the teams had actually met since way back in 2013. El Capitan won that one 42-0. Here's something that's got to give. We're talking about how close this game is, Dave, and I'm going to tell you right now. Maybe I don't even know who I'm going to pick, but it's by a point. You said maybe a field goal. I think maybe it's going to be somewhere. I think the Cal Preps had the ratings now. I think they said 28-27. That doesn't sound too out of the question. Do you think there'll be that much scoring?
You know what? With
4 touchdowns each?
With the both defenses, Santana being more at full strength, it's going to be it's going to be who goes out there and plays their best football, including special teams. And it could come down to that. And let's not forget that we got some speedy folks on that El Capitan team as well.
Yeah, but Anderson's had big plays too in the special teams game, right?
And I'm getting to that too. So it could be a battle of the special teams too.
Oh,
Let them be forgotten. So there could be a higher scoring outcome.
You see some returns maybe being some return game.
So I'm gonna call a 32-30 El Cap upset.
Okay, and I think I don't know if it's maybe it is an upset. I think like I said, the Cal Preps ratings, the CIF ratings, have Santana third, but the Cal Preps rating have it like a 1-point game. So I don't know how you want to look at it there. If you're picking El Cap, I'm going to be I'm going to take Santana just to be sporting about it. I don't want to say it like that. I think Santana can win this game. I think it's a toss-up. I think it's a total toss-up, Dave. I really do.
Coach Tim Estes and Taylor, I know you're possibly watching this right now. No offense to your squad. I think you guys have been phenomenal all year. It's going to be a close one. It's going to be a battle. It's going to be the first of 3 huge battles, like you mentioned, the trilogy, Ramon. But I just think that I think both of them need the game. They definitely both need this game tremendously.
Well, right. I mean, if any of these teams go 2-0 against each other, that's gonna be the league champion. I'm confident of it, despite of what I was saying about the possibility of playing that Santana Mount Miguel game. Now, I mentioned the CIF official ratings, David. The thing I appreciate what you're saying, but look at the top teams in Division III. Listen to this: Mater Dei, Santa Fe Christian. Then Santana, of course, I told you was third. Mount Carmel's fourth. They're one of the hottest teams in the county right now. They are another one of those teams. This Division III is just terrific. When you talk about basically I'd say those 7 teams right there. Westview's 8th behind El Capitan, but you look at El Capitan's 4-1 and Westview's 1-4, played a tougher schedule. So, but the computer ratings that you don't like as much, Santana is 30th and El Capitan is 39th, but West Hills is higher than both of those teams. So, and that's the computers that I think are more accurate than these CIF power ratings. So that's why I'll go with Santana to win it. I know I'm agreeing. I think exactly it's Cal Preps by 1 point, but I like Santana to pull this one off by 1 point. But here's the funny thing I want to say, Dave, is we're talking about this game. You know, we'll be shocked if it's like a 2-score game, right? A double-digit game. But in the 21st century, when these two teams have met 15 times since the turn of the century, El Capitan leads the series 12-3. Every game has been decided by 12 or more points. So it's been a blowout every single time. El Capitan 12 wins, Santana 3 wins. All-time series 32-17-2 by El Cap. And the highest scoring game, 66-13 back in 1968. So I don't think we'll see that. But anyway, Dave, I just think that toss-up game, I'll just go with Santana. You're going with El Cap. All right. Nothing else on that one, right? That was a great game. That's going to be great. Everyone's going to be there.
That's the game of the week. And PPR and any other outfits out there besides us, if that's not the game of the week, then heck, I don't know what the game of the week is, because
there's some big ones. There's some big ones, but that's the East County game of the week, right? That's what you mean.
Yep.
I'll tell you what. You want some intrigue? I'm going to give you some intrigue. The El Capitan, the El Cajon Valley Braves, taking on Valhalla. Now, it doesn't look like the most attractive matchups, but again, I think you got a game full of intrigue right here. The Braves, Dave, they're shooting for their second straight league win on the road for the first time since 2005, after the Braves defeated the Monta Vista Monarchs last week. Dave, a great win for El Cajon Valley. They, kind of got into a little bit of a shootout a little bit. The Braves were the better team, but it was a good matchup of the running backs with Khalil Gordon and Aiden Roby. But Gordon had a monster day and really kind of put his name on the county map. We had already talked about Khalil several times this season with some good performances, but he was one of the biggest stars in the county last Friday night.
Well, let's not forget either that Daniel Jacobs not only throwing Daniel Jacobs was also had a pretty nice set of runs himself, and just some of those long passes that he threw. I'll tell you what, this is exactly how I quoted it. They were a well-oiled machine. I actually had. I believe it was one of our photographers, Ken Todd, was right next to me, and he said, "I haven't seen El Cajon Valley like this in years." And he said they really look genuinely fantastic. And of course, I said, well, naturally, I said, I saw them win their first game as well, and I think they are just going to continue to do what they're doing. I mean, that's why I decided, hey, let's have the offensive line, not just Kal-El and not just Mr. Jacobs, because you know what? It really came down to guys like Luis Hernandez, Enrique.
Enrique, Dave, he's terrific. He's only a sophomore, right? He's going to be incredible the next 2 years, right?
Absolutely. I mean, they just work so hard, and the time that they gave Jacobs to before he had to maybe jump out of the pocket. All he had to do is make a couple of steps up. That's why he made some of those nice throws. And let's not forget the great running by Gordon as well. And then let's not forget, I think he gets lost in the shuffle sometimes, but Mr. Dixon also has been
Paris Dixon, Shane Hobson also.
Yep.
The passing game was – look, Dave, Dave, Daniel Jacobs is playing quarterback wearing number 33. We know exactly what that means. He is taking one for the team. Well, he's probably, he's the best guy they have out, and he was terrific. He had like 185 yards passing in the game. He's a total leader out there.
And the key thing was, and you had mentioned it to me, so I mentioned it to those folks. You might have saw it in the interview. The last time that they won a league game, in fact, was against those Monte Vista Monarchs, and it was on their turf once again in Spring Valley. So I think that's got to be something to be proud of too. But in that game, let's not forget, Monte Vista had a great chance to claw themselves back into that game. Unfortunately, some blown coverage on Elkhorn Valley's behalf, and lo and behold, just went right through his hands. The receiver was right there, and I tell you what, they would have climbed right back in. They would have been a touchdown behind. And I'll tell you what, Coach Osborne pointed that out specifically. He said these guys really came to play, and for you to be able to beat these guys and to hold these guys down says a lot about your character coming into it.
No doubt about it.
So
no doubt.
And then seeing the Valhalla, the Norsemen play, I've seen them play a few times. Even took in a quarter. I had to head out to Spring Valley, so it was about a quarter, and I'll tell you what, West Hills went into Valhalla and really let them know that they definitely are the kings up top. As far as the Norsemen are concerned, especially, one of the biggest issues, it's not the way that they're throwing the ball. It's not the way they're running it's more or less a lot of drop balls. Just bad snaps on punts, getting blocked because they can't hold on to the ball. So I think little things like that, and the amount of drop balls that have been right there. I don't know if that's just due to the youthfulness of these players, but just way overmatched by the Wolfpack in the first place.
Yeah, there you go. That's been the story for Valhalla this season. They've played some tough teams. Don't forget, not only did they play the Wolfpack, they've already played the Sultans. They've played the Eagles. They've played a pretty tough schedule. So let's get real talk here, okay? The computers, look, I always snicker at you when you laugh at the computer ratings, but look, this week, I think the computers got it wrong, right? The computers still have Valhalla probably 2 scores better than El Cajon Valley. It says 2 touchdowns, but, you can cut it down a little bit. It's not that. That's not the case here. And I'm sure that, Coach Bussey's saying, do not look at this at all. You guys got to be right. But in all fairness, Valhalla's got its great chance because they are at home in a matchup where it's a good matchup. The Braves are looking great. The Braves definitely feel like they can win this game. They should win this game. They have to feel like they're the favorites. They can't pay attention to what those computers say, because the computer, even I, who think that the computer is better, and it'll catch up this week if the Braves go in and win this game. But right now, it's got Valhalla favored. I got the Braves winning the game, though.
Well, I will tell you a little tongue in cheek. I got to hear it from quite a few of those offensive linemen, and Mr. Jacobs kind of under his breath, he goes, Mr. Dickens, we're going to love talking to you, but really? Beating them by 7? You only picked us to beat Monte Vista by 7? How about that? How about that? And you know what? You know better than anybody. My late father, Bill Dickens, loved to stir the pot. So
they put up 41 points on him. But that, it certainly has to be a concern that Monte Vista, who was not scoring any touchdowns at all, did score 3 touchdowns in that game. We'll talk about Monte Vista a little more in a moment, but they had a passing touchdown. Roby had a big 67-yard run. It was kind of like matching long runs with Gordon and Roby busting off a couple of big long runs in that game. Made it exciting. Made it an exciting game.
But it just I honestly got to say, Ramon, you've seen these teams in action many more times than I have. But in the 4 years that I've covered the Braves quite a few times, in the 4 years that I've seen them, this is by far the closest knit team as far as togetherness and team effort and being cheerleaders even on the sidelines when the defense is waiting on the offense. I will tell you what, they really looked. They didn't look like a D5 or D4 squad. They looked more like a D3 team out there. The way that they performed against a good Monte Vista team that I think is way underrated. Also, they don't have the numbers, but I'll tell you what, there's some pretty talented players, including, and we'll get into it, like you said, Mr. Richardson behind center. Maybe he's not always throwing the ball,
threw a touchdown last week.
And I'll tell you, I got there at halftime. They were down, and I want to tell you how good the attitude is of those Monarchs, even though they were down to the Braves. First thing Mr. Richardson did, hey Dave, fist bump. We're gonna take care of this.
Well, we'll get to Monte Vista in just a moment. I want to kind of wrap up things because I think we're going to see the best of Valhalla this week, win or lose. I think we're going to get the best Valhalla this season. Tommy Logan, AJ Cornthwaite, Dustin Avant. He left last week's game, and I don't think he returned, so I'm concerned there. I really want to see the sophomore running back. He looks very good and might have some success in this game and on defense. Khalil Plummer, Randall Shaman, and Harmon Shamo, among others, for Valhalla. So this is the first meeting since 2001. Valhalla won that one 49-13. It's the only time that these two teams have met this century. The last Braves win was in 1997. They won that one 28-20. But the all-time series is just Valhalla 15-9-1. El Capitan led back in the early years 6-2-1. So it's Valhalla 13-3 but none of those numbers matter because they really won one game this century. The programs are, in relative proximity, but they just never had matched up as non-conference teams, and now they're in the same league. And I've got it as Dave. I've got it as a close game this week. I know that the computers definitely have it. I think the CalPreps computers has it close to 17, even if you threw in some home field advantage. I mean, you can't see Valhalla winning this one by 2 or 3 touchdowns. So I've got to call it as a close game, and I've got I've got El Cajon Valley winning this one. About 4 points. 4 to 6. Can I say 4, 5, 6 points? Somewhere right in there.
Well,
I know you're going bigger.
Well, due to the grief given by the offensive line and Mr. Jacobs, I want to tell you guys, he did a fantastic job, and I have full belief in the Braves. And I think, let's not forget, Ramon, they had 2 other games we keep forgetting about, that they were within 6 points of winning 2 more games. They could already be going into this one in reality with 4 wins, getting ready to get their 5th. Just saying. So
they lost to Vincent Memorial by 2 points, right? And
then the Cardinals.
Yeah, no, they lost that one by 2 touchdowns, and that was, that turned out to be a bad loss. The Braves need to win this game. They're in 10th place right now in their division, in the Division 5. So Valhalla is actually in better position, but this is an important game. They're going to lose a lot of position, Valhalla, if they don't win this game because of their favoritism. And that's unfortunate because it's going to be a close game. So I'm not saying that the ratings are wrong, but if the Braves do win this game, Valhalla's rating will take a hit, and they'll might be fighting for their playoff lives for the rest of the league season. While the Braves, I've venture to say they may have solidified their playoff berth last week. 10th place makes it kind of tough, but a win this week, win and they're in.
And with you ending on that note, as far as the Braves, I think they are going to pull this one out. I think they're going to pull it out by 2 touchdowns. And so I'm going to call it. I'll give Valhalla some points, but I think it's going to be a 28-14 Braves win. And you know what? I will even go out on a limb. You know what? Teams, I will tell you a quote by Coach Casey Ash from West Hills. He said, and that gets into 1995. I don't want 1995 to repeat when they lost to, guess who? Valhalla in 1995 from being a perfect season that year. And West Hills would love to have the perfect season and the best team ever this season. But I'll tell you what, he said the first thing I'm going to do during the bye is he's going to look at that film and he's going to be dissecting those Elkhorn Valley Braves because he doesn't want the duplicate situation happening. So I'll tell you what, you can call up Coach Estes too. These Braves are and Coach Ron Berner said it just the last time he played them too. He said this is a new Braves team. You know, they're a lot more classy bunch. They win as a team. I just can't say enough. And they could possibly, and you talked about it just last week, you know, they win this one, they're in. But how about if they even upset one of the top dogs at the top of the valley as well? They might have they might even get a home game if they do something like that.
Well, and we saw, they did. El Capitan did come in, and look, the thing is that why we know the Braves are good. You look at the start of that El Cap game. Braves are huge underdogs, but they played even with El Capitan early on in the game. In fact, they shocked him. Yeah, they shocked him for the first touchdown. So we know they're good. Valhalla better be ready. Like I said, I don't know how. And again, this is just a Valley League. I'm not saying just a Valley League game, but it's not going to get a lot of play in the county. But if the Braves win, they're gonna call it a big upset, and I don't think it is. I don't think it is an upset necessarily. It will be called a big upset because the computers say Valhalla should win this game by around 2 touchdowns. But it just seems like the eye test says this will be a good game, a great game. Everybody's gonna have a good time Friday night at that game because it should remain close.
Folks, if you haven't seen, and I'll tell you, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm playing favorites, but it's because I've seen this team in action. But I think because of the talent matchup too, if you were to go out to see a high school football game in the East County, besides of course, the El Cap Santana, I would say that this is a secondary that would definitely be of equal proportion for sure. So
I'm sure it'll be nice. Yeah.
Go out and see those guys. This is probably the best Braves team you're going to see anyway than in the past. They're fun to watch.
I'm sure there'll be a nice crowd at Valhalla, but if you don't want to fight the crowds and still want to see a good game, you want to fight the crowd out at Lakeside because it's going to be pretty tough to get a good park. Get there early, right? I don't know where you're going to be parking, but might want to just Uber in. But the Braves Valhalla game will be close, and so will this one, Dave. Our other Valley League matchup, I think Monte Vista and Mount Miguel, they're going to be expected to win this game, but it looks like it's going to be 2 grinded out teams, and you got the Battle of Spring Valley, so anything can happen here, Dave. We haven't seen the Matadors since September 17th. They lost that game 35-6 to West Hills. Of Mount Miguel, of course, had that shutout win over Crawford, but lost the opener to Henry just to refresh everyone there. And Monarchs, we know that they've been having trouble, but they did score those 22 points last week, Dave, against the Braves.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, you were mentioning Henry, and really both of them just got trounced by that Patrick Henry team.
Good point.
They got their number. I mean, so you can neither one of them really were any better.
We can't really compare, right? It was the same.
They got it was bad. I didn't see the Mount McGill one, but I can tell you the Monte Vista one was not pretty. But at the same time, they beat the Crawford Colts. Mount McGill did, and I know you wanted to give them some pretty good credit, especially Ruben Martinez stepping up, and Jeremiah Castillo was another guy that stepped up, and unfortunately, those two games that they couldn't because of the one of them because of the COVID protocol, but then the other one because of lack of staff. However, I think Monte Vista is. I think they're almost there. I know that Coach Hamamoto has beat that one quite a few times. No offense, Coach, but about the numbers game, he said that quite often, and it is true.
Yeah, and it's a factor, but it's not going to be as big of a factor here, right? Because I think that the teams are equal.
Well, that's what I was getting at. Is the Matadors have similar numbers over there. And they've been playing with those numbers for quite a while, actually, the last couple of seasons. So they're pretty. I mean, it's a regular thing over at Mount McGill. But the one thing, the factor I think that people don't look at is, those two games that they didn't play. I think that really does have an effect on a ball club and not getting as much game time play. And that's where I think one of the advantages is going to be in favor of the Monte Vista Monarchs. And they've traveled, they've played great teams. So they, overall, Monte Vista's had the tougher schedule. They've lost some, to Lincoln, first of all, and then going up to Rancho Buena Vista, who's turned out to be one of the better teams as well. And then who was the other team? And then
you're talking about the Monarchs' losses.
Yeah,
Imperial, right?
Imperial.
They're Division III. I mean,
they're
Rancho Buena Vista and Henry are Division IV this year. So Imperial, all those teams are kind of the same as far as the rating is concerned.
So really, with the exception of the Braves, a league opponent.
Right.
Really, Monte Vista is and I'm going to include the Braves. They have played a tough schedule. Besides the numbers, let's just erase the numbers of who they're suiting up. He said it in so many ways. Not as much talent as they've had in the past. This is true. They don't have a big Javon McClendon. Bulldozing people, but I think they still have a good line. I think Roby's a fantastic back, and it'll show in the numbers that he's been pretty good. And then let's not forget all the things that Richardson can do as well. And then like you mentioned, and I saw it, just a beauty of a pass. And I'd almost wish he would.
Nathaniel Barragan.
Yes, and I wish he would throw more often because you know what? I think that this kid is just a talented athlete overall.
Yeah.
And not to mention that he does. When he, I think if I were Coach Yamamoto, with just to change it up a little bit, I think that this Richardson kid. I think that he could be great with the bootleg, whether you roll him out to the left or to the right. I think that he has the arm strength, and I think that he has the accuracy. I'm not saying he's going to throw a 60 or 70-yard pass across the field like that, but if an old guy like Teddy Bridgewater can do it, I think a youngster like Mr. Richardson can definitely do it. And I think I just think that they could really take advantage of throwing on this defense of the Mount Miguel Matadors, and I think they could be very successful just to change it up.
Yeah, yeah. And here's the thing, Dave. In the computer ratings, the Matadors are a pretty substantial favorite, but I just can't see that being the case when they get out there. Two running. I know that the Monarchs have shown some passing, so have the Matadors, but these two teams are relying on on the ground game. So maybe turnovers will be a factor here, but we're going to see drives. Who's going to sustain drives? Who's going to win some field position? Who can take advantage of a short field? Now, maybe Mount Miguel can get it done and win this game like it says in the. I think the power rating had them by at least 19 points. You throw in some home field, maybe 3 touchdowns. I would definitely cut it down. I know you're going to pick the Monarchs, and I'm going to end up picking the Matadors here, but I just see it being a closely contested game because I see two teams that are going to want to run the football, grind it out. This game's going to be over, in 2 hours.
I will tell you one thing, though. How about this? How about a little friendly lunch or dinner wager that we see a double pass from either the Monarchs or the Mount Miguel Matadors just to change things up, huh?
Well, maybe it will be some trickery, and hopefully, look, nothing's come down. Nothing said that this game isn't going to be played. So we're previewing this game. We hope this game gets off on Friday night. And Dave, Mount Miguel, Ruben Hernandez doing a great job leading the team. Matadors have won 4 straight in the series. They were going to meet. Remember, the game was canceled last spring. They were supposed to meet on the final week of the season. So Monte Vista leads this century 10-9. All time, Mount Miguel 32-27. And the last time these two teams played was back in the last full regular season, 20-19. Dave, you might remember this game. Monte Vista won 55-34. That was the highest scoring game in the series between the Monarchs and the Matadors. And I've got the Matadors winning this one by a touchdown.
And you know, you are right about. I'm going to go with Coach Yamamoto and his boys in their Burgundy, and I think that it's Mount Miguel.
But I'm not gonna.
They do have. Let's give them the home field advantage, but at the same time, I think that I'm going to say that I think Coach Yamamoto is going to be more of the gambling type than Troy Starr. Let's put it that way. So that's why I'm saying maybe a double pass or maybe a flea flicker.
You're always right on. You're always right when you make those projections. You're going out on that proverbial limb, aren't you?
I've been hanging on that limb and for a while now. It eventually is going to break, but it's been kind to me.
All right, let's keep talking about these games because you made that comment about the Padres earlier, and the Dodgers have just hit back-to-back home runs to tie the game in the 9th inning. So, Dave, let's move on. The Steel Canyon Cougars, they've moved up to the 3rd-rated team in the East County. If you go by my favorite computer ratings, Steel Canyon, despite their 1-5 record, they're showing against Steel Canyon actually kind of helped them in the computers, but they're going to have a tough game this week. They're going to be taking on St. Francis of La Cañada. Dave, Granite Hills Eagles are going to want to watch this game because they're going to go up and make the same trip next week to St. Francis. St. Francis from the Angeles League, they're probably expected to be about a 2-3 touchdown favorite here against the Cougars. Cougars looked good last week on the back end, getting some touchdowns against Cathedral Catholic. You mentioned you always talk about that Cathedral Helix game, 52-0. Well, the Cougars scored 3 touchdowns last week against Cathedral Catholic. I think it was 49-21 or something like that.
Well, I could say that dang it. Dang, where did it go?
If the cat doesn't show up, I'm going to have a problem.
I locked her up.
Oh.
Anyhow, my point with the Cougars what was it that Kellen said? Kellen Cobbs after winning
About
that.
making this same trip to St. Francis?
No, about the big one. He said, because we talk about how always every single year that the Cougars play the Granite Hills Eagles, how close those games are and such. And he was Cobbs was commenting on how tough of a schedule Steel Canyon has this season, which we've talked about several times. And um, I think this is a true statement. And I know because they're good buddies, he wouldn't take it bad or anything like that. But he said they could be at that time, maybe the best 2-5 or 1-17 by the
No,
time that they like the toughest team to play despite their record.
for sure. I mean, we already see that. I mean, look, they're 1-5, and like I said, if you look at the computer ratings right now, and now it's starting to shake out. The Grossmont Hills League, we certainly, we teased them, made fun of them for that terrible week that they had, and it was kind of deserved, right? I mean, we got our behinds whooped that week, but now playing these tough teams and the way it shakes out. And I'm just talking about the computer ratings now, which are useless, but it's still right now Helix, Granite Hills, Steel Canyon as the top three teams in the East County. If you go Christian, I mentioned how Christian was rising, West Hills is rising. They all were rising, but right now the powers that be are kind of taking shape, and even Steel Canyon with this 1-5 record currently is rated above all the Valley League teams already. So this is going to be a tough game. They're expected to lose. Last week, Jacob Manzo came in at quarterback and scored a couple of touchdowns against Cathedral Catholic in the second half. I don't know that much. I looked it up. I looked up St. Francis, pretty good team from the Angeles League. But I've got St. Francis winning this game by a couple of touchdowns.
Yeah, I'm going to have to unfortunately, again this week, gonna have to pick against the Cougars. Which I hope you've been enjoying the huddle footage that you've been getting. But you know what?
I never see. I never see that. I can't open it, or I don't know.
Anyway.
We're not getting a lot of info from Steel Canyon. Matthew Barton, their young quarterback, hasn't been playing over the last two games. That's why Manzo was in there, and Eric King also played in the game. I think he threw a touchdown against Cathedral. I did watch the game. I mean, it was on NFHS, so I did see the game. Cathedral. Nice job by Steel Canyon. Really, just get some scores.
I just think they can put up some points, but I think that. I think the weak link really has been the number one. They're playing the top talent, not just in San Diego County, but outside of the county as well. And and I think that's a great thing that Coach Longerbone likes to compete against these top teams. I mean, we know Mike Jordan did it for Grossmont College for how many years now? Done the same thing. But at this point, I think the defense isn't going to be able to stand up to St. Francis, and I think that is going to be the Achilles heel. Unless I think really, in order for Steel to steal one, is turnovers. And if they can win a turnover battle, there is a good possibility. That is the only possibility for an upset. Still,
Adrian Chargaloff, he could be a specialist in that department.
And it's just too bad that they're not going to be playing at their home field, so they can get up on the chair, the steel chair, and after making some key turnovers. But because they are going on the road as well, I mean, it's just that too many odds are against them. I got St. Francis by 14.
Yeah, I do too. And Dave, you mentioned Steel Canyon going up to play St. Francis, and then Granite Hills going up to play St. Francis next week. And the Grossmont Hills, it's tough when you got this 4-team league. I just don't know if there's any way around this. I will say this, the Hills League has had to scramble, and they've ended up in some pretty bad situations because they really had nowhere else to turn to. And when you try to go find an elite team, and you can't get a game in San Diego, everybody's booked up. They don't necessarily want to play a Hills League team because the Hills League teams are pretty good. The Hills League team, not only did they get the shaft trying to go out and schedule some of these matchups, and we saw Grossmont, go up and play Warren. We've seen Helix is incredibly difficult. Now they kind of take on the challenges themselves, but as far as our team's going, they paid the price because when they switched back to the old CIF rating system, now all these games don't really count for anything when you go out of the section. Even I talk up the computer rankings because I think they're accurate and they help project these scores. I think I made fun of the projections maybe on these last two games, and I think that the computer projections are far more accurate for the higher caliber of teams than they are for the lower caliber. And I just think the Hills League is not benefiting now. Hopefully they can for the next years. And I know they've already started to schedule some games and they want to take on some challenges, but they really need to try to schedule games in the county now and not go out of the county against superpowers because unless you want to, I don't have a problem with it, but you benefit now by wins. It's because now the formula for the ratings is more general than it is specific. How's that?
No, I mean I concur. I almost look. I think and who knows now that and thank you, Mr. Wilbur, for all of your service to the Grossmont Conference Athletics. I was fortunate didn't get to spend as much time, say, as my father had, or maybe others have, but had a cup of coffee with him a couple years ago and, spent about an hour with him, just kind of discussing some things. And one thing that came up for discussion, and he had some reasons that I didn't agree with and some reasons I did agree with. The bottom line was, I said, what do you think about bringing their East County team? I think that they would be able to compete with, let's just say, or some of our D3 or D2. I would put them in the Hills League, actually, to be quite honest. And that's bring Christian High on to be the fifth team for the Grossmont Hills team. I mean, what better? Yeah. And I know that, oh, man, people are probably calling 911 right now because I just said that. But here's the thing. I think it's a great idea. What's wrong with it?
911?
Yeah.
Well, here's a funny thing about it, Dave. And I don't know if that, I know that's been talked about before too, and your dad talked about it as well. But Ron Berner said, you know what? It's finally good to be in the right league, right? But you know what? If there was any year that El Cap, and now granted, they're already got their work cut out for him with West Hills and Santana. It's going to be tough enough, but El Cap, they could probably go up against those Hills League teams and give them a battle this year. In fact, all the teams probably could the way it worked out. I mean, you're not talking about the top three teams in the Valley and the top all the teams in the Hills League would made some interesting matchups in there, especially given some home field advantages. I don't know. Could have been an upset or two. That wouldn't have happened, but I'm just saying this would have been the year. Now, granted, the Hills League teams could jump up again. They're good this year. I think Helix is still underrated by the pollsters. I think Helix, there's going to be some, they might lose their next two games and still sweep the Hills League and win. But, we'll see. We got our own second part trilogy to come. So I've kept you a long time. We've only got 6 games. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So should I make a call to Donnie Carroll and ask him if we can pencil in the Christian Patriots for our 5th team? And because I can tell you right now, I bet you if I asked Coach Mitchell, he'd be more than happy to come into the to the Grossmont Conference, and I'm willing to bet on that too. But at any rate, I think either way we need to fix what's going on there with some of these out of town games and watching those non-league teams just pounding our
Yeah,
our
I
team.
like it. I like it if you have a competitive matchup, right? And that was the thing, that if you went out of town and you got beat by some superior team, it helped it doesn't necessarily hurt your rating. That's why I said, like, in the computer ratings, Steel Canyon didn't really suffer. They actually kind of gained by their performance last week, I think, against Cathedral Catholic. But the for the more general CIF ratings, it doesn't help to go out of the section anymore to play anybody. They're graded as just like a regular division game, like in your division, like Division 1 or something. So let's go
Well,
on, and unless you have something else to say about
no,
it.
I just want to, since we were already talking about it, we'll move on to the next game. Stay tuned though, because I'm going to actually try to, and I've mentioned it to you, so I want to tell the public too. I'm working on it. Hopefully next week I can get them on, as I'd like to get Mr. Wilbur and Donnie Carroll on, and kind of pick their brain, and kind of see where we're headed, and if they're open for suggestions, and maybe I think a lot of the public would like to know too what's
I don't know
going
if you'd want me on that. I don't know if you'd want me to do that show with you. I might take up too much of their time. You'd have to cut me off. I have a billion questions for these guys. But anyways, Dave, this one's Mountain Empire. I'll get you out of here. Mountain Empire and Vincent Memorial. This one, I believe, is being played at Southwest High School in El Centro at 6:30 p.m. Mountain Empire, 28-0. What a second half last week, Dave. They look great. They got it together. They still have the injury bug. They're missing their quarterback. They basically just run the ball every time right now, and it's going to be tough against the Scots.
Well, I'll tell you, I think they kind of reminds me of MASH. I just think that they're getting so many injuries at a time. They got those they got the gurneys ready at all times. And it's unfortunate too, because that's the same conversation I had with Coach Ricky Prince, is how many people keep going down. But at the same time, Larry Clark decided, you know what, I'm going to play the whole game though. Badminton all, I'm going to play the whole game. I'm going to make some tackles. And I mean, he was going to go for 200 yards on the ground. So let me tell you, hats off to Larry Clark for just getting out there and giving 150%. And I think kids like that, I think that's what brings a team like Mountain Empire together. They see he's got a bad mitt, and he's going out there. He's making tackles, possibly even 1.5 arm tackles, and then able to run the rock, or should I say, running people over. And looking at the records and all, as close as they did play against early on in the year, so close against Holtville. I think that says a lot about their team too. Yeah, and we do have the injury bug. I understand, but they've had a lot of next man up folks that have stepped up, and I just really think that even though they have to play on a neutral field, which I think advantage Mountain Empire on a neutral field, and who knows? I'm hoping that by some miracle, Corey Van can be 100% and getting out there and
had a broken ankle, right? Or is it a sprain?
Yeah, it just I'm being facetious because
I'm sorry.
You look at Larry,
I don't know.
You look at Larry Clark out there, with and granted he's more the linebacker than he is the running back, but I'm thinking of him.
He was running great before the injury, though. He was carrying the ball a lot.
And I think even with a second string quarterback and handing the rock off as many yards as he's covering each carry, I think that he can carry that offense against Vincent Memorial, and I think that'll be the key. And then just let Mountain Empire play their defense. Maybe they get a couple of turnovers, and I think that probably is what realistically is going to win the game, is keep that running game going. And if he can get over 200 yards and a couple of downs, I think maybe a turnover or two, maybe a couple strip sacks by himself. I think that this Mountain Empire team is very capable of beating Vincent Memorial,
Oh, for sure.
and then getting up to 3-3. And I think they'll be for their division. They will definitely be a playoff team for sure. And I don't think they'll be too far down the tree in their league play, or their league, I should say, either.
Well, they get another shot at Holtville. Remember, the first Holtville game didn't count as far as league was. It counted, of course, but I mean, they lost that game 22-14. Now it was at home, and now they got to play, Holtville on the road. That's in 3 weeks, but
They
this
could be
is
a lot.
close. Yeah, go ahead.
They could be a lot healthier, though. Can you imagine getting all those guys back and then going into
Not
Holtville?
Van's got to be out for the season, right?
No. But there's a couple other injuries as well on defense, and I think
I think everybody, all the big names on that team, it seems like they've gone down.
But they still won the game, and that's what from what I understand from Coach Prince, great
second half, 4 touchdowns, right? Was it 7? It was either 0-0 at halftime or 7-0 at halftime. And then they really mashed them in the second half with a running game.
Now that's what I'm saying. It almost reminds me of a further east Elkhorn Valley type Braves team that they just keep fighting, and I think that you got to really appreciate football teams that will themselves into a win, and I think that's exactly what happened there. So, with all that being said, I am going to say my Mountain Empire Red Hawks are going to upset the Vincent Memorial Scots by 7.
Okay. And I don't, I guess you can call it an upset. I mean, the teams are they're rated pretty close. In fact, the CalPreps predictions has Mountain Empire winning the game, and they have Mountain Empire, I think 1 or 2 points better in the ratings. And, this being like you said, a neutral site game. I think it's Vincent Memorial's home game, but yeah, I don't think that matters. I liked what I saw out of Mountain Empire last week, so I just think it's going to be close. I'll take Mountain Empire as well in that game. I will say this: you mentioned the playoffs, but Vincent Memorial, they're 13th in Division 4, so it's almost like with this game being so close, you got to win this one. But for Mountain Empire in Division 5, they're even further down. They're outside of the playoff bubble right now. They got to win this one too. So this is a big game for both teams, and I think they know it going in. These teams are so closely rated, and even though they're in different CIF divisions, this one could go a long way in determining their playoff fate, unless maybe Mountain Empire were to score a real upset. I'll say a real upset, but say Mountain Empire were to able to beat Holtville or Palo Verde in one of the last 2 games of the season.
Right.
So, okay, I'll just touch on one other game. We'll get out of here. It still went 75 minutes. So, Maranatha Christian is going to take on Foothills Christian. Foothills Christian won by forfeit last week over O'Farrell. O'Farrell has had to forfeit 2 weeks in a row. Maranatha Christian lost 57-21 against Francis Parker last week. The game is rated relatively close in the computer rankings, but Foothills Christian, maybe they're starting to finally gain some footing from their poor start. The computer rates it Foothills Christian by about a field goal, and that sounds pretty good to me. That game is at Sayal Field at 7 o'clock. Foothills Christian and Maranatha Christian. Okay, Dave, I know you're going to go out to that big Santana El Capitan game. Enjoy that one very, very much. I'm sure we'll be talking about that one next week and the other Valley League, because we're still not to the Hills League season. So we got another, I think another week of Valley thrills, another couple weeks of Valley thrills, but we can still kind of focus on the Valley League until those final weeks of the season with the Hills League. But don't forget, West Hills, we keep talking about, they have both those games at home against those Valley League rivals, El Capitan and Santana. So maybe that's why you're still picking them.
It's my secret.
Yep, and we know that they'll do it on the field. All right, great job. For Dave Dickens, I'm Ramon Scott. Thank you for joining us.